Well, I started with the idea of animals partly because I came from a time, an artistic context, where the idea of looking outside yourself was of significance. In some ways, we are our own subjects for most art. I have made perhaps 3 or 4 figures in 35 years. I needed to make things that were separate from me because in some ways, making things separate is an encouragement to get out of one's imagination and into the world. The star shape is, I think it's essentially iconic or idiomatic. I started to use stars simply as a reference to the intangible. You work with what one might call, say, presence and absence. So you have a positive, it's a real thing, there it is. But when you're looking at the cutout, it becomes more ephemeral. By going back and forth between the positive and the negative, you can start to evoke that problem of what's a star and why do we think about it. One of the things that, as a sculptor whose work grew out of the idea of the most heavy and substantial thing, was to leaven that kind of heaviness with the ephemeral nature of light. So the star in that sense was a perfect vehicle to counterpoint it with the animal. We look at constellations and they say, well, how can you make a bear out of that? I mean, it doesn't look like a bear. For Luna, I was interested in this sort of juggling act between the real and the imagined and the abstract. The work is called Stardust in Time, and that came from the idea that a lot of people think that life began 800 million years ago, and that one of the key requirements was time. Well, 800 million years, of course, is a lot of time. I wanted to kind of play with the idea of creation, and so I decided that I would elevate the bear 14 feet up in the air and put the stars on the ground. Then there became another component, which was the idea of a backdrop, not simply like a background to a bear, like woods and trees and stream, but the idea of creation itself, where you have this kind of effervescent skyline where the stars and arrows are around the bear on the walls like space. And in a very particular way, the kind of energy that you see when you look at pictures of planets and stars, where there's a layer of something and something is breaking through that layer. When you look across the screens, you see a particular kind of energy. You could probably see the bear existing on its own, but once you put it in front of those screens, it took on another added dimension, which is how come things get here? How come anything exists?